Welcome back to Mayo Clinic Radio. I'm Dr. Tom Shives.
And I'm Tracy McCrae.
Tracy, you know, screens are everywhere. We're talking television screens, computer screens, the smartphone that we all carry around. We have constant exposure to the media.
Yes, absolutely.
But that means that controlling your kids' screen time is harder than ever. You can say that again. You got a couple of them.
Yeah, I do.
You know.
So what is a reasonable guideline when it comes to TV watching or playing video games or smartphones? Here to discuss kids and screen time is Mayo Clinic Pediatrician Dr. Angela Mattke. Welcome back to the program, Dr. Mattke.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Mattke, good to see you. So we want to know, what do the experts say? What is an appropriate amount of time for your kid, depending on their age, of course, to spend on their phone, their computer, at the TV, etc.?
Yeah, the guidelines. What do we need to know?
Absolutely. So as you touched on, it really depends on the age of the child. So the American Academy of Pediatrics recently came out with new recommendations that looked at different guidelines and taking a more pragmatic and evidence-based approach than they had had in the past. As you mentioned, screen time is everywhere. Screens are everywhere, and children are being exposed from birth on. And so what we started to look at is how media and especially the new digital media can affect young minds. And so when we look at 18 months to 24 months, the recommendations is still really not to proactively engage in screen time. But if families do decide to do it, we gave some more guidelines based on recent evidence. And so if families decide to do it, we recommend that they do it with high quality educational programming, first of all. And then also the most important caveat is that they're doing it along with their child. They're sitting there next to them, because children in that age, they don't have the developmental capacity to be able to use that two-dimensional interface and to be able to incorporate it into new developmental milestones and outcomes.
So from 18 months to 2 years old, that's what the recommendation is. What about before 18 months?
We still recommend no screen time before 18 months, with one exception again. So those interactive devices such as FaceTime or Skyping, they have been shown to be somewhat helpful in helping that social communication develop. But like I mentioned again, kids don't really have that capacity in that age group to be able to incorporate in what they're seeing and help them determine some of their social and developmental milestones. And so you need to have that parent sitting next to them and explaining what they're seeing so they can help incorporate it into kind of a three-dimensional picture for them and help advance their milestones. So this is what I do with my children with FaceTiming. You know, we're sitting there, you can teach them new words and work on some of the other developmental milestones in that setting, but it really media shouldn't be used as a babysitter in this age group.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That 18 months to 2 years old. What about the 2 years old to 3 or 4 years old?
So they've actually switched those guidelines as well. So between 2 and 5 years of age, we used to say 2 hours or less of screen time per day. But that has changed to 1 hour or less of screen time per day, because we really want children to focus on other areas of their development. And so much of their development is learned through social play and interactions that if they're spending 2 hours or more, they're not getting enough time to just work on some of those skills. And additionally, we see that more than 1 hour of screen time in 2-year-olds has been associated with increased elevations in their BMI. And so this is not surprising to us as pediatricians.
So their weight.
Their weights, exactly. Yep, we're seeing unhealthy weights associated with even more than 1 hour of screen time, and that was a large part that was taken into account of the recommendations for 1 hour or less in this age group.
And does this include all of the screens, like mom's smartphone, plus the television, plus the minivan screen in the back? That total 1 hour.
It's all of it. It's considered recreational screen time. So we're not including when they're in the older children when they're in the school or educational setting, because we're using screen times for their teaching, their education, for their research projects and things like that. It's including recreational screen time that they're doing for their own enjoyment.
All right. So from 2 years old to 5 years old, 1 hour
or less
total.
Yes.
All right. So then what about 5 years old to what?
5 years old to 18 is generally where we say after 18 you're an adult. So we recommend that these children are still 2 hours or less per day. The majority of children are not getting this. The majority of children are getting much, much more. And we do recognize that there are benefits to some of this new digital media. But there's also, side effects, and there's detrimental effects to it. And that's where that line in the sand has been drawn. As we start to see more and more hours of screen time per day, we see effects in their weight. We can see detrimental effects effects in their mental health. We can see it affecting their sleep and also some of their social interactions with their parents and friends.
No, wait a minute. We're talking about between ages of 5 and 18. Now, does this include texting?
This includes
and Facebook time
yes,
and
yes,
everything,
yes.
2 hours or less per day?
It is. It
now,
is.
Tell me your kids are even close to that.
Oh, sure. We follow all of the guidelines at our house. You know what is interesting, though, is that when I was growing up, if you would have taken away my television, I would have gone crazy because I just loved watching TV.
Right.
Not even a thought.
Right.
That would be way down the list for my kids because it is Minecraft time for my son and it is texting for my daughter.
Right. That's exactly what you said. TV is not an important media source for kids. It's all the other gaming resources, their smartphone interactions that they're having with their friends. It's the FaceTiming, the texting that all adds up to continuous media exposure throughout the day. And upwards of 25% of children or teens are saying that they do actually feel addicted, that they cannot go without having their screen time. And that's why we're starting to recommend having screen-free zones, and not only with the kids, but as parents. As you mentioned, mom's cell phone. Same with myself. Mom's cell phone, dad's cell phone, mom's work email that's constantly going off. Putting those aside and having screen-free zones so you can interact with your children, and setting times during the day where you maybe wouldn't be using those. Everyone puts their screen phone or smart device down, and I think it can lead to some benefits. And I'm not saying get rid of everything. I think using a pragmatic approach and really looking at maybe ourselves first as parents and trying to set it as role models is harder to do, but something that I know that I'm trying to look at as a parent.
Those recommendations seem almost unrealistic, at least based on what I see from my kids. Do you have any idea how the average teenager, how many hours per day they spend with screen time?
About 5 to 6 hours per day, the average teenager. If you're talking about their texting use and all the other social applications, most teens are on multiple different applications at one time. We call it multitasking.
Well, how do you enforce this?
How do you keep kids from being addicted to their phone?
So I think starts early, kind of setting expectations about what you guys are going to allow. There's the American Academy of Pediatrics have come up with a family media plan where you can go to healthychildren.org and you can do to the family media plan, and it helps you as a family come up with reasonable guidelines and expectations.
I have it bookmarked on my computer right now.
Healthychildren.org.
Yep, I've got it right here.
Yeah, because they realize this is hard to do. I mean,
because we didn't grow up practicing it ourselves.
Exactly.
It's something that you have to learn as a family of how we're going to do it, and it really is not just the kids.
Yeah,
that is a fact.
Yeah, not easy being a parent, and it is truly interesting how dependent they become on their. I mean, I think if I told my kids that they would have to put their phones down for an hour, there might be pandemonium. There might be havoc. There might be a strike at our house.
Hey, what do you do? How do you know that the programming is educational? Going back to you said educational programming for the littles.
There's a website called Common Sense Media, and they have rated different apps and TV programming and other media sources about whether they're educational or not, and whether evidence has gone into using that. Anything from PBS.org has really high educational content and a very pro-social message, and that is recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics. That if you're going to use these are great ones to do, and there's actually evidence that it teaches kids not only social behaviors and communication behaviors, but even some of the basic school readiness.
All right, sorry.
I was just going to say. And what about the situation where I almost see it as a pacifier? You said, as a babysitter, I'm almost seeing a pacifier where if the line is long and the kid is getting fussy, that you give them the smartphone and then it captures their attention while you have to wait in line.
Right.
What about that?
Yeah, that is a huge problem that we're seeing because kids are not developing that social emotional regulation piece that's really important. So I think there's certain situations where that's appropriate, long airplane flights, medical procedures, things like that. But you also don't want to use it in place of a simple hug or a kiss, or providing
day-to-day.
Yeah, day-to-day interactions and stuff. So allowing your children to be frustrated and to be upset is an okay thing. And I think as a parent, you need to start to implement that early and not reach for the smartphone and turn on the YouTube video.
All right, there's good stuff at pbs.org. You can go to healthychildren.org. And then the other website you mentioned, commonsensemedia.org?
Yes.
Commonsensemedia.org. All right. Well, there you got the lowdown, the latest recommendations from the American Academy of Pediatrics and Mayo Clinic pediatrician, Dr. Angela Mattke. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.